Hello, everybody. Oh, dear.
That's good.
I know you might. For people who aren't hearing well, it's a gift. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm Joe Cosentino. I'm chair of the LGBTQIA Plus and Allies resident interest group that my husband Fred and I started here. And it is June Pride Month, so we have done amazing things this month. We've had a happy hour with rainbow cookies and snacks and rainbow accoutrements. And we've had 4 movies. The last one is this Thursday. 2 speakers, and it's been great. So today's speaker, I don't know very much about Eve and her new group, so she is going to tell us all about herself and her group and her goals and where she sees things to be in the future. But it's terrific because the group has New Paltz in it, so the name New Paltz, so it's definitely something that should impact all of us. So here is Eve.
All right, so can we hear me on this mic? Thank you. My name is Eve Papp, and very nice to see a familiar face in the audience today. How are we? So I'm a very long time resident of New Paltz. I currently live in Gardner, but I've been in this town for about 26 years now. When I started living in New Paltz, I looked slightly different than I do right now, we can say. To give you the hint, I was the person sitting at the door in P&G's checking IDs. So it was very different back in those days. But this was the 90s, and coming out as trans in the 90s was, I would not imagine, to be the easiest thing. It's something I never thought would be possible in my life. I then started teaching middle school, and that kind of reaffirmed to me I would be staying in the closet, unfortunately. So I lived with that for most of my life. Until one fateful afternoon, my stepdaughter came home. She was about 20 at the time. She did not know about Eve. My wife has always known. She's always been very supportive of me. And I'm doing the laundry, which was in the kitchen at the time, wearing a very cute sundress, and I hear the key hit the lock. And I jumped out of my skin. Ran into the bedroom where my wife was. She was in the walk-in. I ran in and I slammed the door. And she said, "Did she see you?" And I said, "I think she did." And then there was knocking on the closet, and she said, "What's going on?" And I looked at my wife and I said, "You have to go talk to her." And she said, "You have to go talk to her." So this went back and forth for a minute until I, and you cannot write this, looked around and realized I was trapped in the closet and I had to come out. So this is my life, basically. I did come out to her and then came out. And it was one of the most beautiful days and moments of my entire life. It was at that moment I realized my wife and kid both know about me. They both accept me. I don't care about anything else. They are the important ones to me. And it was at that point that I started slowly coming out to friends, to family. It took about a year until I was ready to really pull the trigger to that really, really, really scary moment of hitting post on Facebook. That's the official moment for people of my generation. Once it's Facebook official, you are out. So I did. That was about 2018. And again, I had lived in New Paltz for over 20 years at this point. I knew its reputation of being an LGBTQ plus affirming and welcoming town. And I remember coming out and I was like, "I'm out!" Where is everybody? And that's how it felt. A few months later, Pride came around. and I found myself in gay Disneyland. There was rainbows everywhere. I felt accepted. I felt seen. It was fantastic. It was overwhelming. I woke up the next day, and everybody was gone again. They were gone again. You know, like Pride was here, everybody came out to celebrate, but once Pride ended, everyone kind of went their own ways again, unfortunately, and it felt very lonely again. And this went on for about a year or two as I was coming out. Then somebody once told me, nobody grows up or plans to be an activist. Being an activist is kind of thrown upon you. And a few years ago, if you were here in 2020, you may remember there was a police officer who, in uniform, in the police car, decided to do a transphobic rap and put it on the internet. And the town exploded. And I was reading all these comments, and they're very, very, very supportive of our community, but I realized that people weren't truly understanding how bad that hurt to somebody in the community. So I penned a letter and I put it on Facebook again, where everything starts, and it became a very, very big talking point. The next day I was asked by the mayor to speak at a board meeting and to read my letter. So now I'm being filmed on television, I'm speaking in front of the town, and one thing I said was, we need something here in New Paltz. We need a center. We need somewhere when people don't know what to do, they can find somebody to talk to. People can walk in off the streets and say, I have questions. I've had so many people come up to me personally as well. I'm a teacher, so I have a lot of families that know me, and a lot of people will come up to me, especially nowadays, and say, my kid is coming out as trans, my kid is coming out as gay. What do I do? How do I help them? And a lot of people don't know. And I know myself, when I came out, there was a lot I needed to do that I did not know how to do. How do I change my name? How do I get a new birth certificate, driver's license? Who do I turn to for support? But again, in our town, there's nothing. I call us, for those of you familiar with Adams Fairacre Farms, I say that we are in the Adams Triangle. If I want to go to Adams or to an LGBTQ center, I have to go to Kingston, Dutchess, or Newburgh. But there's nothing here. And nothing but love for the Mid-Hudson Center. I know Richard came and spoke from Kingston, but in reality, that's about a 30 or a 40-minute drive for a lot of people. And that's if the person has a car to begin with. So it's not that easy. It's a great center, but it's not here, which is what we kind of need. So when I penned that letter, the last thing I said is, I don't want to be here to cancel this police officer and to fight and to just call them bad names. As an educator, I would rather sit down for a burger and a beer with him and explain what his words meant to us. And about 6 months later, I got a phone call. Were you serious about that? I said, absolutely. So there I am, a few days later, sitting across the table from the police officer who made the rap. And we spoke, and we must have spoke for 2 to 3 hours. It was an amazing conversation. And we kept talking, and he said, you mentioned we need a center. So he started to work with me. We tried to build a center. And we were doing well, and we were getting things moving, until I got a phone call from the mayor and the chief of police that some very bad things were happening with that officer, and to break contact, to get away, to not talk to him, and to separate myself from him. And unfortunately, at that point, I had felt like we were making waves, things were going good, and you all know what it's like to get the wind taken out of your sails. So that kind of slowed the center down for about a year. Slowly started back up again. So it was kind of one of these You make mistakes, you learn, it fails. You make mistakes, you learn, it fails. Until not this June, but the June before, 2023, there was 5 of us that said, this center has to start and we need to get this group going. And we had a small Facebook group at the time. That was it, maybe 50 members, 100 members, very small. And last Pride, not this one, but a year ago, we said, let's start this coalition. And we named ourselves the New Paltz Pride Coalition because that's what we want to be. We now have some other smaller groups in town. There's a group, Julie's Girls Club, that does stuff, and there's the Gunks Gaming Guild that does stuff. So we do have some smaller groups, and we're not here to be in competition with groups. We're here to, let's all work together. If you have something great, we're gonna advertise you, you advertise us, we're gonna work with you, you work with us. And that's the point. That's why we're the New Paltz Pride Coalition, because we do want this to be a bunch of people working together. So about just over a year ago, the 2 owners, Zach and Amanda, who own Manny's Art Supply, if you happen to be familiar with them, they said, well, we have to work during Pride, we're gonna donate for you to get a table. And then me and my wife sat there handing out stickers saying, do you want to join a Pride Coalition? Do you want to join a Pride Coalition? And we told people we need a center in New Paltz. And everybody says the same thing, even to this day when we table. What do you mean? You have a center in New Paltz. We go, no, we don't. And they all kind of stop. And they kind of look up into the sky and then they look back at me and they go, you're right. There's nothing here in New Paltz. He said, yes, that's why we're here handing out stickers right now, because most people think there is something in New Paltz. They think there is a place for people to go. But at the end of the day, we don't have anything. So what we started doing was handing out stickers 12 months ago. I then learned what a 501c3 tax-deductible charitable organization means. So I've learned all that paperwork. You can imagine how much paperwork I've been doing. So we became an official incorporated 501c3. We have adopted a highway. That was a very big happy day for us. And we started throwing meetings. What we do now is we have meetings at Village Hall. Because again, our goal is to be as local to the center of town as possible. To make it people can get to, that they have accessibility to. Because if you can't get there, then we can't do a whole lot with it. So we started throwing meetings. We threw a pizza party to start for fun. We threw a costume swap. If you're familiar with New Paltz, you may know the really big Halloween party that they have every year. And one of our members said, let's do a costume swap. People get older, their kids get older, they outgrow costumes. And you know what happens to all those costumes? The attic maybe for a couple of years, but then exactly right, they wind up in the trash. So we said, why are we doing this? Let's just tell people, bring old costumes you have and bring your kids and have them look for next year's costumes, right? We threw what we called Queersgiving, which was a big holiday party around Thanksgiving. Because unfortunately, as we know, a lot of people can't go home for the holidays in our community. So we threw a big party, and we had people like Hannaford sponsored us and gave us food, and we just had a nice, happy time together. We threw Happy Holidays in December, which I think we had about 80 plus people at. And there was just decoration making and hanging out, and we now started getting people together in New Paltz. In February, and I believe Wayne was at this event, we decided to do a small event called Love is Love, right around Valentine's Day. It was just gonna be a fun little, we were gonna do a drag brunch, and it was gonna be a nice, fun day for everybody to come out. And about 4 weeks before this small party happened, somebody said, you know, it's about 3 days away from the 20-year anniversary of the first same-sex marriages in New Paltz, which were basically the first same-sex marriages in the United States. And we all kind of looked at each other and said, all right, this is not a little party anymore, is it? And we have 4 weeks to make this happen. So in 4 weeks, we wound up selling out novellas, if you know, right off the Thruway, which was an incredible feat for us because it started with a budget of what was in my wallet at the time. So it was, did not have a lot to work with, but we knew we wanted something. We got the former mayor, Jason West, to come back from Albany. We got one of the original couples to come back, and they got remarried in front of everybody. We had newspapers coming out. We had the county executive, I believe one of the senators from the state was at this party. We just had an amazing party, and you know, we were calling it Pride in February. Because now we're not waiting for once a year. Once this came and went, we found out the people that ran, a lot of times it changes who runs the New Paltz Pride March. I know the Mid-Hudson group has been part of that for many years. They had actually started that about 20 years ago, but one of the other groups disappeared, and then we got told, oh, so you're throwing Pride this year? We're like, I guess we're throwing Pride this year. So we helped with Throw Pride. We threw the festival this year as well. We've been throwing after parties for people. So we're really, really working to make this, you know, the LGBTQ in this community, not just to have one day a year, not to have, you know, a 4-hour march and festival, but we're doing parties. We've actually started support groups. We have a trans and gender non-binary support group. We have a families group right now, where different families are getting together and kind of putting on small events, so they can have little get-togethers with each other. We're starting a gay, lesbian, bisexuality group, and any other, you know, sexual orientation that wants to come. We're trying to start a group for them, and those are all evolving to not just like, this is what it is, but we're trying to get people together and say, you know, what do you want to do? What things are you looking for in this community? And we tell people as well, if you have a group, because people love to come up to us and say, well, what about this group? We say, fantastic. Do you want to throw this group? Like, we'll work with you. We'll help you learn how to plan this. And sometimes people get into that, and sometimes then people unfortunately disappear. But we do want to make as many groups possible as we can get. And that's really our goal. Our goal is to get an actual center in this town where people can, like I say, walk in off the streets, look for help, look for community. It could be legal help. It could just be, I need a friend to talk to. Because many people in our community, it's very important to have a friend to talk to have somebody that understands your lived experience as well. So that's pretty much a good run through of like who we are, what we're looking to do. We are looking, like I said, we just want that place, and we just, even online, we have such a following now between Facebook and Instagram, because now we're moving to Instagram, so I'm learning about that part of the world, which I knew nothing about a year ago, but I now know about stories and all that stuff. So we have about 1,000 plus followers now. And again, considering that 1 year ago it was me and my wife handing out stickers saying, you know, do you want to form a coalition? New Paltz Pride Coalition, sometimes that word cracks up in my head. And funny story too, this year at the Pride Festival, I was actually given the mic to open the festival. So, you know, I thought in 1 year going from somebody that just had a table and some stickers to having our actual logo on the flyers and opening the festival was a pretty big year for us. So I've been quite like happy. I'm loving what we're doing. I'm loving that we're becoming an important group. The deputy mayor and myself who are involved with this actually just got invited 2 weeks ago to the governor's mansion. They had the second New York State Pride brunch, which, by the way, the governor's mansion throws a really, really good brunch. I tell it to everybody, the bacon was incredible. I've never had bacon like that in my life. I have to give them the 5 stars on that alone. But it was incredible. I mean, we were with some, you know, very important representatives that were there. And again, just to see the moves we've made in a month has just been incredible. So that's kind of, I guess, I would say who we are. I don't think there's too much basic information I can get out? Are there questions or?
Yeah, we have the mic. Actually,
Flyers?
yeah, we have flyers you can take, but we're going to do a Q&A definitely. And one of the good things about being the chair is I can get the first question.
Oh no.
Since I don't know you well, I actually have 3 questions, and then I'm
Okay.
sure other people have questions. First question is if you want to share about your own personal journey. In other words, some people know when they're very, very young children that they're gay or not in the right body gender-wise. If you want to share what your journey was like personally.
So I grew up in Long Island. I'm one of those people that the transplants from Long Island, right? So I grew up there. I was born in '79, raised in the '80s. I knew who I was. I have memories going back to preschool. I mean, it goes as far back as I can remember. I remember going to play house with the girls at preschool. I don't hold any ill will to my teachers, but back in 1983, 84, you know, you see a boy going over to play house, what would happen? You're gonna go to the sandbox, you're gonna go play Army. And that was pretty much growing up. And, you know, I hear people blame the liberal media. In 1984, I can't think of which liberal media was telling me that I was transgender. I do not think that existed whatsoever. It didn't. And I knew who I was. I knew who I was in elementary school. I knew who I was in high school. Sad story. At about age 13, I started getting really horrible stomach issues. And colitis runs in my family. So I went to the doctors. You have ulcerative colitis, you have ulcers. I would be sick about every other day of my life. Every other day. Till I was about 35, 36, I started getting hospitalized and started getting so bad. And they took CAT scans and they happened to get the picture of the bottom part of my rib, or my lungs, and they said, you have something we call nodules on your lungs. You have to go to a lung doctor. And I went to a lung doctor. At this point, I've been 20 years of seeing every GI to begin with, so I'll go to a lung doctor and took full pictures of my lungs. And he said, you don't have a few nodules. Your lungs are covered in nodules. And he said, and they're bad. So he said, we just have to get you on antibiotics, we need to treat, and we did, and we did all this work, and I come back, you haven't lost any of the nodules. They're bad. And he goes, you may be someone who just happens to have these. So we're going to keep monitoring you. 3 months later, I monitor. 3 months later, I monitor. I let him know about my stomach issues. And he tells me sometimes one organ's problems can lead into another organ's problems. I have to meet a lung doctor who talks to me about lung biopsies, which he said he did not want to do, but I needed to be prepared for them. And after I came out to my kid, I prepared for the worst bout of being sick you could ever imagine, because the stress that day was unbearable. The next day I wasn't sick. The next day, I went to my doctor and I told him, he said, yeah, it's stress. You've now made yourself sick for 20 plus years, every day of your life. And yeah, sometimes I still get sick, people get sick, but it is not a daily thing anymore. And a few months later, I went back to my lung doctor, who took all the x-rays again, like he had done for several years, and guess what we learned at that visit? Brand new lungs. He said they are crystal clear. He says, I can't give you a reason for this. I have no idea why your lungs are clear, but you are spotless. And I told him about coming out, and he looked at me, he goes, you just fixed 2 problems. So, I mean, this is something I have carried my entire life. Even at points I didn't realize I was carrying this. But, so yeah, I've always known. It's always been a part of me, and like I said, I am so happy every day my kid came home early that day, because I was so good at hiding it, which is what is incredible to me. If she wouldn't have caught me, I don't know where I would be right now. I doubt I would have found the strength to come out. I doubt I would have found the courage to come out. And I'm still the only teacher in my school district. and we have well over 1,000 staff in the entire district, and it's still a very difficult journey, but doing things like this helps that journey a lot. But I do have a joke. I don't know if anybody here happens to be a Rocky Horror Picture Show fan. Well, I am Transylvanian, and technically, I am a sweet transvestite from transsexual Transylvania. So maybe the liberal media did put, maybe that was the problem. Maybe I saw that movie too many times. But besides that, like I said, I don't know, where I would have gotten this idea of who I was, but it's something that to my core, I have always known. And my journey, I know, has helped a lot of my friends too, because they're like, I get it now. They kind of understand after watching me transition. So that is that, if that helps.
Yes, well, we have to show that movie next year and have you back,
We should.
since it's about you.
It's about me.
Rocky Horror Picture Show, yeah. So, yes, when I was a kid, there was nothing about LGBT people in books, movies, newspaper, TV. So where did I get this as a little kid? It just shows that it's inborn, because nobody told me about this. There was no, even the liberal media wasn't speaking about it. And so that's an interesting point, yeah.
And if you ever want to see an interesting graph, so some of you may know that it wasn't that long ago you could not be a lefty around here, correct? There is an amazing graph that shows what happens when lefties were allowed to come out. And the graph does this, straight up. Because now a lot of people say, why are so many LGBTQ people coming out, especially why are so many trans people? It's the exact same graph. You could almost overlay them with lefties being allowed to be lefty. Once we're allowed, we finally said we're out. So now that's why the floodgates are opening, and it's not just younger people coming out, but a lot of older people. Like myself, I came out at 38. But unfortunately, a lot of people at 38 can't come out as well, because then they now have the fear of their jobs. So they will stay in. So sometimes it might look skewed that it's just the younger generation, but a lot of the older generation is like, I'm married, I don't want to come out, I have a job, I don't want to come out. So it's difficult. But I always tell people to look at the chart for lefties, and it's very similar to our chart.
25 times in the Bible it says you shouldn't be left-handed.
And I think 7 times it talks about unicorns. And I'm actually serious about that.
So,
Unicorns.
So my second question, because I have 3, then we'll open up. My second question is about what do you have a possible space in mind? Because you're going to need a space. Are you eyeing any possible spaces?
So we have one small space we're looking at right now, which is just an office. We're not talking much because we still have our fingers crossed. So we're trying to start something small because there was one place we fell in love with. I don't know if anybody is familiar with. It's now a church. It used to be a bar called Barnaby's for a long, long time. Their whole downstairs is office spaces, and they have like a 3,000-foot entertainment spot upstairs with a bar and bathrooms and kitchen. And I called that phone number and I said, what are we talking? And they said, we might be able to negotiate a little bit, but with taxes, it's $12,000 a month. A month. So there's our budget, and hopefully it's a good month. So yes, we're still, again, we're new. We do actually have a bank account now, which we do have some savings actually now. So if we can get an affordable place, we can probably pay off for the year, which would be great. And then obviously we're going to keep fundraising throughout the year. We've now moved into the grant writing section. So we have 2 people working on grants. As a dyslexic, I've decided not to put myself on the grant writing committee. I decided other people have that skill and they can do that. So yes, we do have a place that we're quietly hoping for, that we're in talks with, which would be right by Main Street. It would be small, but it would be a place where we can hold groups. We can have somebody there. We can have people to go there. So that's the big goal.
That's great. What you need is a rich sugar daddy.
Yes. I'm blonde, I'm 6'2".
So, my last question is, why you read all the time in the news about people so horrified and so upset about drag queens reading stories to children. Now, I'm on the library committee here. I have my cohort here, Joyce, and books are everything to us. We love books. I'm an author. I've written 34 books, and I just can't understand why anybody would be against anybody reading. I used to love to be read to as a kid. I used to read to my niece and nephew when they were kids. Why would anybody be upset by anybody reading a book, getting them off the computer video games, reading a book to children?
So from my personal viewpoints on that, it's to me not really about the drag queens. A lot of this goes back to the 70s and the 80s with gay men about how they're grooming children. So then they see that the drag queen is reading a book to a child. This is now grooming children. It's a good way to pull at the heartstrings, that we're coming after kids by reading them stories. I'm an athlete. I've done several what are called Ironman races, if you know what they are. Basically, it's what you do. You wake up one day and you realize you want to hurt yourself really badly. And then you spend a lot of money to do this on bicycles and things. I've run several of them. In 2021, Copenhagen, Denmark, their Ironman actually had a film crew follow me and put me up. They're all about inclusion. I no longer race with Ironman. I've basically been kicked out because I'm a trans woman. Sports are the same thing as drag queens reading. It's the same thing as the bathrooms. It's not about the bathrooms. It's about the bathrooms like it was about the water fountains. It's not about the bathrooms. It's about fear. That my whole purpose of putting myself through hormones and surgeries and coming out to my friends and family is so I can attack somebody in the bathroom. The steps I follow in the bathroom are pee, wash my hands, leave. But again, going after that is a way to say, we are doing this to go after the children. We're going into the bathroom to go after the children. We're taking over sports. You know, I tell people in the Ironman, our world champions is called Kona. It's in Hawaii, and if you can run fast enough, you can qualify. And people tell me, I'm doing this so I can get into Kona. And I tell people, I used to finish third to last as male, now I finish third to last as female. And if I'm faster than you and I take your world championship spot, you never deserved a world championship spot, because nobody behind me is going into the world champions, I can promise you that. But it's about them fighting to scare people, especially when children are brought in. And what's even hard for me to talk about right now is, I've been saying this for years, it's not about drag queens reading to children, it's about people exactly like me. They're not going after the drag queens. The reason they're doing it is that's something they could put on a poster and scare people. These are drag queens. It's not about drag queens. I'm very afraid for myself in November because things go a certain way and I don't want to get political. I don't know if I will be fired on January 21st. And I'm actually truthfully afraid of that. Because if a drag queen can't read to a child, how can a trans woman teach earth science? And that's what scares me every night. Because it's, to me, not about the drag queens. They are an easy target. And that's how they dip their foot in the water. And if they get people to be afraid of drag queens, and they get that following, they can get you afraid of the next person. And as a teacher, and I do not know this poem perfectly, we go to the Holocaust Museum every year. And one of the very last quotes is, you know, first they came for the socialists, and I did nothing because I was not a socialist. And that is, to me, at least what's happening, is they're starting to pick off slowly, build their group. Once you have this group, you can then go for that group. And it's kind of similar to what I said I did in 2018 when I came out to my wife and kid, and you know, I wanted to come out to everybody the next day. I was like, I'm out. And my wife said, let's speak with the therapist. Let's just kind of work on this slowly. And my therapist had great advice for me. They said, listen, it's your story. You do it how you want to do it. But if you just come out to everybody tomorrow, and even if they all support you, you're going to get 300 phone calls. Why didn't you speak to me first? What's going on? And he said it's going to be overwhelming. He said, so, start picking your allies. Start, come out to your family. Start coming out to your close friends, the people you know that are going to support you. And that helped me a lot. Okay, I know this person loves me. They're going to support me. So that's, I've built up my allies, and I think they're doing the same thing. Let's build up this little tiny hate group. These drag queens are going after your children. They're reading books. And as a teacher, they're already trying to ban books in my school district too. And we're in New York. And everybody tells me, you're safe in New York. I'm not safe in New York. I can pretend I'm safe in New York, and I'm safer here than Florida, but I'm not safe in New York. So that's what I think this is about. I think it's a lot more than the drag queens. I think that's a good point to start with, and then you expand.
Yeah, I agree. On a positive note, we had in our library here, Marilyn, one of our residents, brought in and read these beautiful LGBT-themed books for children. She had a whole slew of them that were certainly not around when I was a kid. And it was great. And we have a Pride Month in the library with my books and other LGBT-themed novels. And so there's always the negative side and the positive side. So do we have any other questions? I'm sure we do. What are we thinking about? Anything else we want to ask Eve about?
I thank you for sharing. I'm always interested in this town. We sort of have students and have residents. I'm not sure what the right word is. How does that affect what you think you can do? Do you ignore the students? We're talking about the SUNY students, the college students, the SUNY. Where do they fit in what goes on in the town? Because we're new here, actually, so I don't have a sense of whether the SUNY students are considering themselves part of the town, and if so, whether they are potentially allies or antagonists.
Or participants.
Yes. We're always going to have both, unfortunately. I would love that everybody was an ally and everybody was on our side, but we're always going to have people, unfortunately, that are against us. That's the way the world is. I don't think anybody has 100 support in anything that it's done anywhere. For the most part, the students are very, very supportive. The world is changing a lot right now. Generation Z, which is the new generation I'm teaching right now, they are saying that about 25% are now identifying somewhere in the LGBTQ+ community. So there's a lot more support. We are open to the entire community. So when we have our meetings, when we have our events, we have people coming in all the time that are just residents that live in New Paltz. We have people that are students that are coming in. We do work with SUNY New Paltz, has a SUNY Pride group, so we have connection with them as well. So we send them invites to our events, they send us invites to their events, and we kind of really do work together. Yes, for the most part, it is very, very good. For the most part, there's a lot of support. And like I said, our events that we do, we don't just keep them to us, we put them on the New Paltz Facebook page. We just had a prom about 3 weeks ago that was open to everybody. And I do publicly put that on the New Paltz page, on the Gardner page, on our page, and most people are very supportive. However, it is hard because even if I get 20 people supporting me, you get that one negative comment, and I'm human, and I take that to heart, and it hurts. Luckily, the admins for both those pages are awesome people, and I just report to admin. You know, sometimes I like to fire back, but usually that gets me in trouble, so I try not to. And I just do report to admin, and they'll read what these people say, because it can be very negative, it can be very harmful, but you know, that's where we have to learn to, you know, as they say, grow the thicker skin, which is very easy to say, not very easy to do. And that's where a lot of times it's nice with my board members. We lean on each other when we need to, and somebody else will take over. But yes, we do have overwhelming support from the students, from the residents. We have a lot of acceptance going on.
You mentioned the early same-sex marriages. You must know Billiam.
Of course I know Billiam. That's where we threw the prom about 3 weeks
Of course,
ago.
he's doing a wedding venue at his farm now.
Yeah, I was at Billiam, had about 2 months ago, I want to say, through a fake wedding that I was at. And they had the whole farm set up, and one of our board members actually, who takes a lot of our photos, has a professional photography place. So that's what was happening. So we were all plants. And she was able to go around and take all of these photos as if it was a real wedding, but not disturbing anybody. So I did let Billiam know at the end. I said, from the bottom of my heart, I swear this was the best fake wedding I have ever been to in my life. And Billiam was very, very happy to hear that. But I absolutely love Billiam. He is
And I wonder if you know Angie. Angelina Boros. She runs Hudson Valley Handy Girl.
Oh, yes, I do. Yes. Okay, that part just gave that away to me. Yes, definitely know Angie. She does. She's got her whole house painted right now, doesn't she?
She does a soulmate.
But doesn't she have her house painted in rainbow, Angie?
It was painted rainbow.
Yes.
And now it's a dark brown now.
I did not know that
When's
she
the
changed
day?
it.
We went to the day she got her house painted.
Okay.
She had painted out a little house, and she had advertised in the community that she was going to paint her house rainbow. And this was in retaliation for an incident that happened in her neighborhood, and she was saying "F you" to the neighbor. She painted the house rainbow and had a big party and lots of food, and lots of people came in and painted it. And she's made her statement, and that was a few years ago, and
Okay.
now she's painted it normal.
Okay. I did not know she painted it back, but I was almost at the painting. I had to miss it. We were actually talking about it together. And I was supposed to be at the painting party, but we couldn't go. But yes, I know Angie.
I think a lot of the problems on the negative people is fear.
Yes.
They're afraid. They don't know from really that anything's going to happen being reading to children, but they're afraid, and they're afraid of their own beliefs and so forth. So keep at it.
Thank you.
You'll get there.
Thank you. And that's where I said I did not want to cancel that police officer. I said I would rather sit down for a beer and burger and educate, because that is what changes. Education is what drives away fear, because I don't really think I'm threatening. Trust me, I looked a lot more threatening 20 years ago than I do right now. So.
One question, one comment. You said you have regular meetings. When and where do you meet? And is it open to anybody who wants to come?
Yes, so the meetings are absolutely open to everybody. We usually throw them on the 4th Thursday of the month is what we've been doing at Village Hall. Sometimes though, something might change, like when we did the Love is Love brunch, we didn't do a meeting that month. I will tell you, this is going to be a little bit of a rest time coming up for us, because Pride Month has turned into non-stop. I mean, it's 8 o'clock, here I am right now still speaking about it. So we're going every weekend, we're tabling, we have somebody going out in 2 more days. By the way, if anybody here big Indigo Girl fans? Indigo Girls, it was a band. They're doing a documentary at Rosendale at the movie theaters on Wednesday this week. So we have people going there. So July and August, we might get a little bit more quiet right now, because we have been kind of running a marathon for the last month. And I think most of us are very tired right now. We need a little bit of a break. Personally, I'm getting on a plane in 2 days to basically go to the North Pole. I have a goal in life. It is to go to all 50 states, done. To go to all 7 continents, done. And in about 1 week, I will have swam in my 7th sea. So I'm trying to kind of hit it all. And that's part of what I do as well as an earth science teacher, because I like to bring my experiences into the classroom. So we are going up to an island called Svalbard, which is it's an island north of Norway. It is part of Norway, but so we're going to go there. So I think month of July might be a little quiet, but we advertise on our website, on Facebook, on Instagram. If you grab a flyer, there is like the names for Facebook and Instagram if you wanted to go on. There's the website on here if you want to go on. So we've put the names. Everything is New Paltz Pride Coalition.
So the website will tell when the meetings are and everything.
So we're going to put a calendar together. It's just newpaltzpridecoalition.org. We're not in a .com, we're in a .org because we're special. So I'm learning that too. But yeah, Facebook, Instagram, all those different ways you could always reach out. We have a Gmail, again, same name if you ever want to send an email to ask. But again, just bear with us for right now as we recover from this marathon month and get ready to get back in September again.
And just the other thing, talking about the original marriages in New Paltz, I don't know if you're aware that Dawn Sangri is a resident here at Woodland Pond. She was one of the ministers who did the original marriages.
Yes, I think she picked her up right after Jason, correct? When they started like threatening
Yes,
that
Dawn
Jason was
Sangri
going to
and
jail.
Kate,
I did not know she was here.
Greenleaf.
There are about 6 or 7 ministers who picked it up after Jason.
Yes, yep.
Yes.
But Dawn Sangri is a resident here, and she was one of them.
That is awesome.
Besides being a very close friend of Don, I mean, I want just to make another comment. Do you think that there is any likelihood that the US will accept gay marriage as a regular marriage? I'm saying this because originally my wife and I from Argentina, and you would think a Latin country, I mean, it's a used to be a religious country, but they passed, I think 5 or 7 years ago, that marriage, gay people can marry. There is no distinction, it's marriage.
Yep.
No distinction whatsoever. In the US, there is still distinctions. And that
Well,
has...
not legally, there's not.
What's that?
Not legally.
What's that? It's
Not legally. Legally, it doesn't say gay marriage on the certificate is completely the same as regular marriage. People just refer to it as gay marriage if it happens to be 2 gay people, but there's federally no difference between 2 men, 2 women, a man and a woman. There's no difference legally in this country.
I thought that was not quite the case, because there was questions about,
Overfilled.
gay couples, I mean, having to declare, for instance, access to, if one of them is in,
That was the
The
case in
hospital-
Oberfeld, correct? That was the case there. Oberfeld is the case that was,
Yes.
Under-
Decided by the Supreme Court.
was it 2018, 2016?
Yeah, quite a while ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And it's gonna be
Everything
legal.
is equal.
And we had to fight in many lawsuits against clerks in some counties, in some states, who refuse to issue a marriage license. It is illegal not to issue a marriage license to a man and a woman, a man and a man, a woman and a woman, a trans and a trans, I mean, it's all the things. A marriage is a marriage according to the law of the United States right now. There are attempts to overturn that, but it is the law of the land, and has been for some time. Before that, we had something called a civil arrangement, or civil,
Civil union.
Yes.
no, it's a civil.
There's domestic partnership.
Domestic partnership and civil unions.
Domestic partnership.
And you had to have contracts to protect yourself. But now you have all the protection of the state and federal laws wherever you live.
Okay.
So today's a good day for you.
What's that?
Today's a good day for you.
Well,
You
I
found out
mean,
good
I have
news.
some, yeah.
Any other questions? Well, we have one, we can pass it up to Peter, please. Thank you.
I was very intrigued about the story you told about the policeman. Is there anything more you could tell about that? Because it's sort of left dangling.
No, it left me dangling. I know that they did some, I want to call it red flag law on him, where they actually went into his house. He used to sell weapons as well, and they went in and confiscated all his weapons. I've asked again recently if I can get more information, and people say, oh, we don't know more, but I heard he was making threats to people. I don't know what happened, but so I was just literally called and told, do not have contact with him, lose his number, get away from him. I don't know what has happened to him since, and I'm not about to.
Is he still on the force?
No, he was removed from the force in New Paltz. He was fired. He did try to work somewhere else, but then they found out what was happening as well. But no, the town did get rid of him, especially because one, it was not right, but you can fight under, First Amendment if you want, but I think it was the fact he was literally in a police uniform, in his police car on duty, doing it, and that's where people were like, no, that's not right, because to myself as a trans woman, if I'm afraid, what am I supposed to do? To go to the police. But then when you find it's the police that are saying this, then you kind of say, well, now what am I supposed to do? So I think that was Rob Lucchese at the time was the chief, who is now retired. I guess did just retire, I believe, a month ago.
May 30th.
Yeah. So he was great. I've spoken with him many times, and he had very much had that feeling like you don't want to be associated with him. That's bad. So I don't know exactly what's happened, but thanks.
Other questions? Yes, we have over here. Pardon me.
Thank you. Among the constituencies that you deal with in your role as a teacher, where do you find the most resistance that is from parents, from administrators, from fellow teachers? I'm presuming it's not from children.
Oh, the kids don't care.
Right.
I was amazed more than I can tell you the day I came in and I told them, and I never even told my wife up until I'd come out, that I was so afraid that my students were going to find out that I was literally just ready for the day it was going to happen. I was going to drive to Washington State. I wasn't going to tell them, I was just going to leave. And that's the things that I held on to my whole life. That's how afraid I was. And when I told them, their reaction was pretty much like, okay, cool. So what are we learning about today? And I was like, wait, what? Like where, but even like I do teach in a kind of a tough school, but even students that have problems with me, and again, I teach 13-year-olds, let me remind you of that. I live in Groundhog's Day, where my kids are 13, they turn 14, and then they turn 13 again, and then they're 14, and then they're 13, and it's been happening for 21 years, and I don't know how to break this cycle. But they're fantastic, and even kids that get mad at me and want to like tell me off and curse me off or just whatever, none of them misgender me, which is amazing. Like I would think that would be like the bam, we're gonna get you, and they very well may do it behind my back, but as someone once told me, what other people think of you is not your business. So I try to say, all right, they're gonna do that, they're gonna do that. No problems with them. The parents, knock on wood, have also been fantastic. I know there's some that aren't going to like me, but I think I'm kind of lucky because I do teach in a very, very large school district. I was there for, I'm going to say, about 13 years before I came out. And I've had a lot of support in my school district. People really like me, the students like me, the parents like me. So I think it worked out well that I was the first person out, because I think most parents know if they're gonna come at me for that, they're gonna have a tsunami come back at them. So the parents have been, again, knock on wood, very good. I've not had that problem. The students really don't see the issue. I make the joke sometimes that every generation kind of kills a stereotype or a hatred. I think it's this generation that's saying, okay, they're trans. I don't care, let them be trans. I think it was my generation that really kind of, and again, this isn't taking away from the people fighting in the 50s or the 60s, what I'm saying is the kids that finally, my generation, started growing up going, okay, they're gay. You know, like it didn't seem as big of a thing to my generation because of the fights happening before us. Then, you know, you go back to when my parents got married. They got married the year after. They're both white, but they got married the year after. Blacks and whites couldn't get married the year before they got married. You go one generation back, and some of you might understand this. My grandmother was not happy when my aunt brought her boyfriend home, who became her husband, who my grandmother fell in love with. But she was breaking a mortal sin 60 years ago when an Irish girl bought an Italian home.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But nowadays, if you say that to a kid, you're Irish, you can't date an Italian. They would not understand what you're saying. But like, back then, that was, I guess, the worst thing you could have done. But again, that's disappearing. And I think every generation's kind of killing some things. And we're done with that. We don't care that gay people get married, that trans people be trans. Like, it doesn't affect us. So I think the younger generation's really helping a lot because they're growing up used to it. I did have some issues with my admin. At first they were very, very supportive, but then they heard I was coming out and all of a sudden it was like, they actually pulled me out of class and told me I couldn't, after they were all supportive of me, and I told them when I was coming out. I went back in my classroom, kind of cried for a moment, and then just taught science. And at the end of the day, my principal called me down, and he goes, I don't know what the hell you do in that classroom. He goes, but after that just happened, I had 30 kids walk into my office and rip me apart. He goes, that has never happened to me. He goes, so if you need to tell them tomorrow what's going on, you can tell them tomorrow what's going on. And I did. And it was quick. It wasn't like, let's do 45 minutes of what it means to be trans. It was like, hi, I'm trans, just want you to know, and I went on. And my new administration is fantastic. And if you want to know something really funny, so this started as a joke. I told you I travel the world. So I have pictures of me standing on the world's largest meteorite in Africa. Right? I can't take that out of my slideshow. So it's turned into a joke that was my identical twin brother. I hope you can understand me using the word identical twin brother. So that's been a joke for a while. Like, oh, here I'm in Africa, and the hand would go up. Isn't that Steve? Oh, I'm sorry. There's Steve in Africa. So I may have learned Photoshop. And all my kids may now think I have a twin brother, because there's lots of pictures of me and my twin brother hanging out in the middle of places like this. So I just told someone that had extra help, and they were like, no, you have a twin, I've seen this picture. It's called Photoshop, you can't believe everything online. And one kid said to me, wait, so you're Steve and Eve? And I just wrote the word Steve on the board, and I erased the ST, and you could have seen 30 jaws hit the floor. So I like to have fun with them, and they kind of appreciate it. Some of them figured it out throughout the year, but some of them literally just learned. But it's been a joke from the beginning, but it's actually helped me significantly, because I now can look at slides and go, oh, here's Steve and blah, 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 blah. And it actually, I never meant it to do that, but it helps me because I can almost disassociate. Like, that's not me, that's Steve doing that. It's Steve doing it. So I don't have to be like, yeah, there's me with a goatee down to here, you know, like there's Steve. So it's been really fun. But yeah, it was fun to tell the kids a couple of days ago that I don't have an identical twin brother.
We have one last question in the back.
It wasn't a question, but Eve, I think your story is wonderful.
Thank you.
But I would encourage you to share the story of what happened at BOCES. And many of you may know, the man who used to run BOCES up in Kingston and Port Ewan actually came out as the principal of BOCES. And he told the kids and the family, in June he was a man, in September she was a woman. And they were all completely behind him. And the reason for it is the same reason you've got it. You're a good teacher, you care about your students, and that's all that counts.
The other stuff is irrelevant, and the more we make it relevant, the more we give it credibility where it doesn't belong. And that's what your kids are responding to. You're a good teacher? No, the other stuff is irrelevant. As long as you make sure they learn that science, and you continue holding to high standards, which is what they respect,
And but I would encourage you to add that story because it adds an Ulster County perspective to it. And that was maybe 5 or 10 years ago.
I'm not even familiar with that story. I'm gonna have to learn about
Talk
it.
later would give you, yeah, she was a wonderful woman and brilliant and a great administrator.
Excellent.
Everyone in all, and the people who were there, who loved her, she knew auto mechanics, and she knew hairdressing, and she knew cosmetics, and she knew culinary arts, and she knew all the trades, right? And they all stood behind her, and every school district supported that change when it happened. So it's really, I mean, I think we need to have more examples. Not that you shouldn't tell your story, but we need to show this is a pattern and that people are responding in that kind of pattern. My story is living in New Paltz, raising kids in New Paltz, married in New Paltz, came out of New Paltz, marks the parades, and everyone said, oh, okay, so Fred's gay now, what? No big deal. And I think we need to keep telling that story to help other people understand.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And on the way out, you can say goodbye to Eva and take a brochure if you like.
Any brochures, if anybody wants, cards, you can read more about us, we have a website.